Welcome to the Sharpe Way Show. It's Friday evening, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And yes, I'm here live yet again. I know I have not been as live as I could have been, but as you can imagine, I am crazy busy doing all types of crazy, dumb stuff. I don't know what's wrong with me, but anyway. And today I was actually, believe it or not, in New York City shoveling snow. Yes, Larry Sharpe shovels snow. I have a small house here in Queens, tiny house, but it's still a house. So it means I have responsibilities of shoveling the driveway and such. Now, don't get me wrong. For those of you in more rural areas, particularly upstate New York, my driveway is a whole lot smaller than your driveway. So it's like maybe 45 minutes and I'm done, if that. And it's just a shovel. So I'm still young enough to shovel my driveway. So I guess that's a good thing, right? So, but I'm here today and I wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about, which is probably why you notice I posted this a little bit later. But I figured it out after I saw the Ahmaud Arbery sentencing. And you might say, well, Larry, are you upset about the sentencing? Yes and no. And I'll explain that in a second. And I'm sure you'll have some ideas on this also. But it brought me not just to that, but to all types of things, all types of sentencing. And it was emotional in a way that I hadn't felt in other ways. And maybe because it's personal, maybe not, I don't know, but there were emotions that bothered me too. And then also, believe it or not, talking to the people I've talked to about the prison system and the parole system and all those things also kind of made me rethink how I wanted to deal with that and talk about this. That's what I want to raise. Let me show you, it's just a few minutes, the actual sentencing. This happened today. For those of you who don't know, this actually happened today. And you can see the actual sentencing, what the judge said. And you'll probably see where I'm bothered a little bit on this. You'll see. He talked a lot about neighbors and friends, and then he went to the actual.
That said, with regard to the sentence in this case, as to Travis McMichael, Mr. McMichael, the court sentences you as follows. Count 1, malice murder, life without the possibility of parole. Count 2, felony murder, is vacated by operation of law. Count 3, felony murder, vacated by operation of law. Count 4, felony murder, vacated by operation of law.
Life
Count 5,
without
felony
possibility
murder, vacated by operation of law. Count 6, aggravated assault, merges into count 1. Count 7, aggravated assault. The court sentences the defendant to 20 years consecutive to count 1. Count 8, false.
Now, 20 years consecutive to count 1. For those of you who don't know how that works, when you get sentenced, I hope none of you ever get sentenced, but if you do get sentenced and you have multiple charges, the sentence can be concurrent or consecutive. If it's, say, for example, I'm making this up totally. I'm not a criminal attorney, so if I'm doing this stuff wrong, don't get mad at me. It's just examples. You get sentenced for armed robbery, 5 years, and assault 5 years. If the judge were to say those to be served concurrently, that means the same time. So your actual sentence is really only 5 years. But if it's consecutive, that means you got to do 5 years plus 5 years. So actually it's 10. So he's now saying consecutively. Well, he got life. So he basically got life plus 20 years. So I guess you bury him under the jail for 20 years. But anyway, there's reasons why. I'll talk about those in a second. But that's the difference.
Imprisonment merges into count 1. Mm-hmm. Count 9, attempted false imprisonment, 5 years concurrent to count 7.
Now he said concurrent to count 7.
Life
right?
plus 20.
So that means that make that clear. He got a life sentence, a 20-year sentence, and a 5-year sentence. He got 3 sentences. But the life sentence, the 20-year sentence is consecutive, but the 5-year sentence is concurrent with the 20-year. So that's why he basically got life plus 20, even though he got 3 sentences. Just so you might understand that. For those of you
McMichael, the court sentences you as follows. Count 1, malice murder, defendant was found not guilty. Count 2, felony murder, life without the possibility of parole.
Same
Count
sentence.
3, felony murder, vacated. When I say vacated, it's vacated by operation of law in all cases. I'm not going to repeat it. Count 4, vacated. Count 5, vacated. Count 6 merges into count 2. Count 7, aggravated assault, 20 years, consecutive to count 2.
Consecutive
Count
again.
8, 10 years, concurrent to count 7. Count 9, 5 years, concurrent to count 7.
Now he
That is
got
life
4.
plus 20 years.
So he got 4 sentences, but 3 were concurrent, right? The 20 to 5 and the 10 were concurrent, so it's all 20 plus on top of life. So life plus 20, but all of those sentences. So you might ask, why does any of this matter? Why would you do concurrent and consecutive? Because if appeal process, if people are going to get rid of things, imagine if you would, if someone, again, in my fictitious case of, 5 years and 5 years, if you do them consecutively, if for some reason someone lowers the assault charge to 2, well, now you got to do 2 plus 5, right? So you still got to do 7. But if you have to do 5 and someone lowers to 2, you're still just doing 5. So it changes how things happen afterwards, whether they are concurrent or consecutive, right? That can change what happens if you get an appeal or someone lowers the charge, or they commute the sentence, whatever. If someone commutes your life sentence, you still got 20 years to do because you got that. Now, if someone, so that's why these types of things matter in this regard.
Roddy Bryan, I do want to separate a little bit because the state is making a different recommendation. And despite the back and forth that Mr. Goff and I had during this case, I do want to point out a couple things that he raised that I think are appropriate to raise with regard to the sentence.
Listen to this.
As far as the remorse, I think Roddy Bryan stands in very different shoes. It is obvious from the beginning.
Now, I want to be clear about this. If you know judges, most judges, not all, most judges don't believe anybody's remorseful. They think everybody's guilty. You walk in that door, most judges are like, guilty. That's why you're here. Most of them think you're guilty. They think you're no remorse. They think you're monsters. Remember something, this is a tough job. Being a judge is a very tough job. It's not an easy thing to do, right? Don't get me wrong, there's still bad judges. But it's not an easy job. You're basically, as a prosecutor and a judge, you're destroying people's lives. That's what you do. So you should be doing it to the right people, right? People who deserve to have their lives destroyed because they've hurt others, done bad things, stolen, killed. You know what? You shouldn't have done that. You get your life destroyed. But what about the people who shouldn't do it? Or didn't do it, right? Now you got to rethink things. So this judge is actually saying, I feel like this Roddy guy actually feels remorse. That's what he's saying right now.
That he questioned the tragedy that had occurred at the scene. It was on, I believe, I can't remember whose body cam, but the body cam, in fact, questioning whether or not what had occurred, and then took steps early on in this process, I think, that demonstrated that he had grave concerns.
This is a guy who the judge says, right? Not anyone can say, I'm so sorry, I wish I hadn't. Anybody can say that, and even the worst monsters say that. So I'm not counting some guy saying, I'm so sorry. I'm not. I'm looking at this. The judge is saying this. He's like, it's obvious. He took steps.
That what had occurred should not have occurred. And I think that does make Mr. Bryan's situation a little bit different. However, Mr. Bryan has been convicted of felony murder. And I do not believe it can be disputed based on the facts of this case, that the verdict was an appropriate verdict based upon the evidence presented, at least. And when I say appropriate, what I mean is legal. Because I believe there's been some discussion about some differences between Mr. Bryan and the McMichaels. There may be some differences, but it does not change the fact that was it not for the fact that Mr. Bryan used his vehicle in a way to impede Mr. Arbery's course of travel, this may not have ever occurred, and that is sufficient for felony murder.
Yep.
He did cooperate with law enforcement.
Cooperated too.
I'll point out, Mr. Goff, 1710-1B, there's actually a case out of Chatham County that says it would not apply under the circumstances of this case. So the court recognizing that Mr. Bryan's position.
Now he just did like a minute on this guy's different, right? This guy, even when he was there, he was like, what are we doing? That's what the judge is saying, right? I wasn't there. I didn't follow this case that closely. So I could be wrong in what happened. I'm going by what the judge believes and what the judge is saying. So he's saying all these things. 2 minutes. Hey, this guy's different.
Is different. Again, Mr. Bryan was found not guilty on count 1 and count 2.
Yep, not
Court
guilty on 1 and 2.
sentences Mr. Bryan to life with the possibility of parole on count.
So this is the part that actually bothers me. It does. And some of you may not care and go, he was part of the gang and, you know, he did the bad thing. But you say all this stuff and what does he get? The possibility of parole.
3. Count 4 is vacated.
Now he wasn't convicted of the first 2. The first 2 top charges he was not convicted of. And they still gave this guy life with that part bothers me.
Count 5 is vacated. Count 6, the defendant was found not guilty. Count 7 merges into count 3. The defendant is sentenced to 10 years consecutive to count 3 on count 8.
Well, in this one, though, he did life, and the 10 years is consecutive. So now you do 10 on top of it. You didn't do that concurrent. So this is the guy who, the judge says he's special. So the other guys got life, no parole, plus 20 years. He gets life parole plus 10? That's the difference?
5 years concurrent with count 8. Both of those counts, though, will be suspended sentences, which gives Mr. Bryan a life with the possibility of parole sentence.
Now, there are so many things here that I want to bring up. And to be forward, I haven't fleshed all this out because this is a very tough spot. Oh, Kirsten's here. Thank you, Kirsten. I'm glad you're here. I'm sure you have something good to say. The idea of sentencing is tough. It is so hard. It's not black and white. It's so difficult to do because if you think about it, what are we trying to say? And while I love having cameras in these, oh my God, I'm so happy we're doing it. While I love that the public gets to see these things, I absolutely do. The thing that does worry me is, are these sentences for the public and the masses and not for justice? I don't know that to be true. I'm being very forward, guys. Seeing this brought a lot of stuff into my head, a lot of stuff in my head. And that was part of what I thought. Did this guy kind of have to get life? Right? I don't know. Right? There's a part of me that feels, no evidence. I'm telling you my emotion. No evidence, just my emotion. Feels like this guy got life because kind of everybody had to get life. I hope I'm wrong. I hope my feeling is just the gut feeling and there's nothing behind it. But man, I feel like that's what happened here. And people are going to say, but Larry, what message does that send? I hear that all the time. And maybe that matters. And maybe it doesn't. But my other issue is, if we're concerned about messaging, maybe we are, maybe we're not. If we're looking for the future, right? If we're looking for the future, shouldn't we take into account someone who a judge, not who just says it because they all say they're sorry, even this terrible bad people say they're sorry, but someone who a judge believes, the guy's been a judge for a while, so not 5 minutes. So he's seen a bunch of people who are con artists, and he believes this guy is remorseful. If someone is actually remorseful, is actually saying, damn it, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm not a monster. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm helping the cops. You know, I didn't want to do it. Shouldn't they at least say, all right, fine, 25 years? Something, maybe that's the wrong number. But you basically gave him the same as other 2 guys who basically weren't remorseful. He didn't believe, at least. I don't know if they were or not. I'm telling you what he believed. He didn't believe the other guys were remorseful. He didn't believe that at all. The judge thought, no, they just got caught. That's what the judge believes, right? Again, I don't know what happened. But he believes the other guy isn't. If your goal in our justice system, assuming that it is justice, it's not, but assuming that was justice, wouldn't that matter? And wouldn't you say, you know what, most of these guys coming through here who are getting convicted are just bad guys doing bad stuff, off to jail you go. Whatever, bye. You should have done it. But now I got a guy who I'm saying, maybe this guy really is, maybe this guy has a chance, right? Maybe this guy, I don't know. I'm telling you my feeling. This is a lot of emotion with me now, guys. I'm sorry you can get mad at me, I know. But maybe this guy has a chance to recover, to to be remorseful. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. Wouldn't we want to give this one guy out of the literally thousands and tens, hundreds of thousands of people we put away every year without giving a damn at all? Got one guy. We can't let one guy go 25 years and give him some hope. And here's why I say it. Because what's going to happen to the other two guys? The McNichols, that guy's name, to brother, father, son. They're never getting out of prison. Right? Never. So they're going to go into prison. They're going to join the Aryan Brotherhood. You know they are. They're going to become heroes for lynching some black guy. They're going to be heroes in prison. And they're going to get Aryan Brotherhood tattoos, never get out. And this is the part about the no parole that does bother me too. What do they have to lose? Nothing. What happens when one of them decides they want to kill a prison guard, beat a prison guard, snap a prison guard's neck, choke a prison guard, start a riot, insert thing here, any of those things? Any of those things. They're going to do it. Nothing to lose. They're never getting out of prison. What do? Put them in deeper prison? You're going to bury them under the prison? Nothing to do. So you not only have you, once you say no possible parole and add 20 years, he's making sure they never get out. And I get the pain of that, right? I get it. I'm a bit torn. Being black, of course, there's emotion on the lynching that occurred. That probably, I don't know, but probably people who aren't black probably don't have the same visceral reaction to. That will be my assumption. I could be wrong. I don't know you individually. You might. But my assumption is most would have that reaction. But that reaction that I have should not be the basis for sentencing, right? The reaction that someone has emotionally to something that would affect them personally probably shouldn't be the basis for sentencing. However, I'm still thinking, do I want to give someone the opportunity to have some hope? I don't know. Right? And then if I'm going to do that, I'm going to put them on basically I'm putting them in jail forever with no chance of ever getting out. Have I just put my corrections officers at worst risk? Is it cruel and unusual? Doesn't matter. Is this a reason for the death penalty? I am against that penalty. But I'm talking theoretical here because this brought up a lot of stuff for me personally, and I kind of wanted to get some of that stuff out. That's what I wanted to bring up. Let me grab some comments. I think you get where I'm going with this. I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking in the chat. I appreciate this. All right, let me grab a couple of these here. Let's see here. Shelly says if it can't fit the neighbor in it, it's not a driveway. Well, yeah. Josh says, missed you, Larry. I haven't seen you, but I'm glad you're back, Josh. I appreciate it. Yes, I absolutely appreciate it. Yes. Let's see here. Douglas says the McMichaels were innocent. They were railroaded. The judge should be overturned on appeal. Well, Douglas, to be forward, I didn't pay that much attention to this. I assumed they were bad and guilty. It looked like they were from what I saw, and I kind of walked away from this. So that was my assumption. If that's true, then the judge has protected himself, hasn't he? He's given them, again, life plus other things. If somehow things overturn, they'd have to overturn all of those for these guys not in due time. So I think they're doing time. I don't think they're getting out of this. The reason why I think they're not railroaded is because of what Roddy did, right? Roddy seemed to be repentant of this, meaning he thought there was a bad thing that was done. So I feel like he's repenting is what I thought. So David says, I support concurrent sentences, abolish consecutive sentences. You know what, David? I agree with you on this, right? I get why they do it because they try to keep the guy in jail. I don't, you know what? But I'm with you. I think consecutive sentences are a bad idea because now you just stack up a bunch of small things and on one event, and now you're in jail for 30 years, right? Don't get me wrong. You shouldn't have done the small thing, but the example I'll give you, David, is, all right, I'm an idiot kid. I think it's cool to go into a liquor store and rob it. So I go into a liquor store with a gun. Stupid, but I'm a dumb kid. I'm 18, 19. I rob the guy. I grab his money. I point it on his face. Someone sees me as they're coming out. I smack him with the gun and I leave. Well, that's 3 charges, right? That's gun, That's robbery. That's assault. That's 3 charges. There may be more, right? But there's at least 3 charges. I get I'm not a lawyer, but so it's at least 3 charges. What did I really do? Rob a liquor store. I should pay the price for robbing a liquor store. But I might get 5, 10, 15. I might wind up going to jail for 40 years. Is that appropriate? Now, some people would argue yes. And I guess we could have that argument on whether you think that's appropriate or not. My gut says no. That's not the right amount. I hit some guy over the head with a gun. Terrible, right? I should pay for that. And that should be some justice that I give back to them, right? I should have some restorative justice for that person because I harmed them. So maybe I need to get out so I can get a job so I can pay them something because I hit some guy over the head with a gun. I should have done that, right? And maybe some trauma that I caused the liquor store guy by putting a gun in his face. I should have done that either. That was bad. But it's all one bad thing. And the consecutive sentences, it just ruins everything. And now again, I'll look at this from so many points of view. One, is it moral or ethical for us as a society to put somebody in jail for 40 years for something like that? That's an argument. My gut says no, right? People screw up. And in this case, nobody died. In my fictitious scenario, nobody died, right? I would say that. But not just that. Do we want to have a system that gives people a second chance at life or not? If we don't, if we're like, no, it's all about punishment and that's it. Well, then shouldn't everybody go to jail forever and just no one ever gets out because it's all about punishment? You screwed up, stay in jail forever. And if everyone goes to jail forever, should we just execute everybody who does bad things? You know, I mean, obviously I'm just, yes, I agree with you, David. I'll say that. Yes. All right. Shelley says there's a reason why inmates are arrested for committing crimes in prison because people with nothing to lose will stop at nothing. Thank you, Shelley. Yes, that's my other worry too, right? My other worry is now you're going to put these 2 guys in prison for a lynching, figuratively. I mean, but basically lynching, right? A lynching. They're going to be heroes in the Aryan Brotherhood community, and they're going to be there forever. I don't know if that's a win. That feels like a loss to me. And then again, I go back to my corrections officers. How are you going to deal with these guys? When they decide they're going to beat some corrections officer up, they're gonna. What are they going to get? They're going to get arrested. They get arrested. Great. I got arrested in jail. I'm going to get life plus 50? I don't know. I feel like you give people nothing to lose. Absolutely. So, all right. Let me grab a couple more of these if I can. Kirsten says, I believe he's eligible for up to 30 years. Isn't the guy like 50? It's the same sentence. Am I wrong? I think he's like 50, right? So if you're eligible for up to 30, most people, if I remember my stats right, some of you may know, don't get parole the first time. If I remember my stats correctly, right? So I don't know. Then Kirsten says, if he's 50, as Google suggests, there we go, and he got parole for 30 years, then had 10 on top of it, it seems basically the same as life without parole, since he probably won't live till 90. Thank you. Yes, we're on the same page, Kirsten. We're on exactly the same page, right? It doesn't make any sense here. They all got the same sentence. So why have your talk, Judge? Just go, you guys are all done. It's over. Have a nice day. But he had the talk, and the talk is what bothered me. Because if we are going to send a message, if we are, and I hope we could when appropriate, the message should be remorseful, really remorseful. Don't just say you're sorry. Do stuff. Do stuff. Show. And according to the judge, again, I'm going by what the judge says. The judge says this guy obviously showed and did stuff and cooperated and showed he was remorseful. The judge bought it. So either he's a great actor, which is possible. I don't know the guy. Or he's really remorseful. We should be rewarding that behavior. He just painted over 3 death sentences. So anyway, Ann thinks I'm right. He is exactly. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes. So, all right. Jenna says, I think he got life to avoid a riot. See, Jenna, I hope you're wrong, but I don't know. And that's the worst part. I shouldn't. I'm saying should. If we had the right trust in our institutions, everybody in this chat would be like, Jenna, you're nuts. That's never going to happen. No. But you know that's not true. I wish we were. I wish we were. I wish all of us were saying you're nuts and there's no chance. I wish you were that wrong. I wish that were true. I don't know if you are. And I don't know if, even if you are wrong, let's say, sake of argument, you're totally off, totally wrong. Too many people in this chat and in this country are thinking maybe you're right. And that's not good. I do hope you're wrong, Jen. I do. I hope you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. So yes. Josh says people want their pound of flesh more than actual rehabilitation. Josh, we have become a world politically, socially, penal system now, where we derive our happiness by how others are hurt. This is not healthy. And again, it goes back to everything you keep hearing me say. The two-party system. I'm going to own the libs, or I'm going to own the conservatives, right? I'm going to own them. And now I feel good. Were you helped at all? No. But they were hurt, so I'm happy. It's not healthy. I think you're on the money, Josh. It's not healthy, right? We should be and again, I'm not mad. Let me keep going on this road. I'm not mad at Arbery's family. Of course they want it. If it was my daughter, I'd want the guy killed. Of course I would. It's my daughter. I'd want to kill it myself. Of course I would. Doesn't mean I should or it's right, but of course I'm gonna feel that way. So would you. If it was your loved one, you would feel you'd want to be the guy or the gal who kills himself. You want to pull trigger. Of course you do. So I'm not mad at the family for being happy. Oh, get him. I would feel the same way. But we have people who have nothing to do, didn't know who he was, never met him, never heard of him. And they're like, yeah, get him. I'm like, this guy to you individually meant nothing to you. He's just some guy. But now you're happy and excited because the bad guys were punished. Yes, but I think we're far too, we do this far too much. So yes. Missy says you can take free classes. Yes, never subjects at libertarianism.com. She's right. You should do that, guys. Head over to libertarianism.com. They are the sponsor of our show. If you want to learn about libertarianism, you can do that. Head on over there. Take something. They talk about happiness. They talk about things like retribution. They talk about all these types of things. It's a great place to go. Share it with others. It's free. You can get some cool merch too. So please, all those things. And of course, as you hear me say all the time, like, comment, share. It does matter. Please do that. 100%. Douglas says, Larry, what should bother you is the judge not instructing the jury that the McMichaels had every right to arrest Arbery, and the statute properly read only require reasonable suspicion of a felony to arrest Arbery. The entire case hinged on that fact, and the judge decided not to instruct the jury, but simply to read the law to them without explaining, basically denying the defense of a fair hearing. The sentence should be 0. They should have been acquitted. To be forward, Douglas, I don't know that law, so I'm ignorant to this part. But are you saying that what a judge should do is not read the law, but express their opinion on the law with an explanation to a jury? That's a tough one for me to, that's a tough one. Again, I didn't see the entire trial, but it's tough for me to believe that should be. First off, if that's a law and these 3 guys had a right to chase some guy down and shoot him, what a terrible law. If that's true. I mean, again, I don't know what the laws are. What a terrible law. That's like there's a hunt down people law. That's a good, I hope that's not a law. But if it is, what a terrible law. So I guess good if he didn't say anything. But I guess in general, do I want to set a precedent where the judge expresses opinion? It's a tough place to go too, even if I go down that road. Also a tough spot. And if he believed it, then didn't he have the option in theory of, I mean, unless they were, I don't think the sentence was mandatory, right? They don't have that where they were. It wasn't mandatory. So he could have just sentenced them to 0, couldn't he? Couldn't the judge have done that, or just said, well, if what you're saying is true, then why didn't the judge say life without possibility of parole suspended because of the law or because of so and so? And if that's also true, what you just said, isn't isn't there going to be a appeal that's going to say, look, this was actually legal, this is bad? If what you're saying is true, it seems obvious. Assuming that what you're saying is true, it seems obvious that an appeal is going to work. And I guess we'll see. But most judges don't want to be appealed. So I don't know. I can't see what you're saying as working, if that makes any sense, as being the thing, but I guess we'll find out. So Shelley says the father-son team have not only not showed remorse, they argue why they thought they should do it. Yeah, that was my point, right? So why would you treat Roddy the same way as those guys, which is what the judge basically did? So if you are sending a message, your message is, no matter what, be an ass because the judge doesn't care. No matter what, fight to the death, no matter what, because the judge doesn't care. No matter what you do, just you get in life no matter what, so who cares? If we're going to send a message, it should always be on remorse, right? Absolutely, right? Remorse. So, all right. Shelley says he'll lose his computer rights. See, now there's a thing that you find, right? I'm glad you brought this up. Most people don't know this. There are a lot of times where COs and wardens want to give gifts and cool things to inmates. And people outside go, why would you give a prisoner that? He's a prisoner. He's a convict. Why? So you can take them away. That's a real thing, right? If you're in prison with nothing, how do the corrections officers control you? There's no incentive. But if you give them something, you get whatever, Taco Tuesday, or you get computer on the weekends, or whatever is the thing you get. So you give them something so that if they screw up or don't act or hurt others, you can take it away. So yes, for people who aren't aware of that, you'll find many things that will seem weird if you don't know the rule. Like, why would you want to give these people stuff? So you have a way of dealing with them. You're dealing with, in many cases, very violent men, and almost always men, some women, but almost always men, very violent men. You got to have some way of controlling them. So often they will give them things so they can take them away. So yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's see here. Jenna says, I think lifers should have the right to live or die. Oh, you mean to ask for execution? I don't see anything wrong with that. Why not? If they want to, I guess so. But I guess then there's no appeal. Do you change your mind at the last minute? What happens if you change your mind at the last minute, right? So I'm like, I'm done. I want to die. And that time comes, kidding. Is that, I get your point. Theoretically, I get it. In practice, how does that actually work? I would be worried, Jenna. How do you actually put them to practice? Theoretically, I'm on board with you completely. In theory, practice is hard. How do you actually do that? And then what happens? The other downside here is our prison system, particularly in New York State, but all over, is basically the largest mental institution in the country, right? Our prison system is where all our people, I'm exaggerating, a huge part of our mentally ill population goes. So am I now allowing, or maybe even encouraging, in theory, the mentally ill to end their lives? Is that what winds up happening, right? Again, in theory, I'm with you. In practice, is that what happens? And then the next piece, depending upon what state you're in, are the prisons privatized or not? And are the privatization, the terrible way we do privatize prisons, it's embarrassing. We shouldn't have them because we just do it so terribly. They're going to want them to stay because they get paid. So they're going to be like, don't die, live. You die, we will get paid. Unless the opposite, you can have incentive for them to kill off prisoners to save state money. In which case, now you have a system to where they're hoping people die. I mean, again, theoretically, yeah. How do you set that system up? That's a tough one. Kirsten says, I'm not talking about the McMichaels being permanently removed from society. I agree. They seem fundamentally bad. I'm with you. But if Brian were released today, do we really think he would kill someone else? Oh, Kirsten, so well put. So well put, Kirsten. Yes. Do we think that? And I feel like the judge doesn't. Again, guys, I'm sorry. I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched the end part here, and it charged me emotionally. So I hope this is an interesting conversation for you all. It got me going. I thought it would get you going. And Kirsten, thank you so much for showing up tonight. I really appreciate it. That is really a good one. I think you're right. And I would say the judge clearly does not think that. So if you don't think that, why would you put him in jail for the rest of his life? If you think that, right? And again, I'm going by what the judge says. It's a valid point. You know? I mean, in theory, couldn't you have done life is suspended? Give him the 10 and the 5? And if he screws up in prison or screws up somewhere, the life comes back. It's is that suspended? Is that right phrase? Where you're holding off? I forgot what it's called. But whatever, I think it's suspended. And you can now reinstate it. Another option. I don't know. But that so well said, Kirsten. Thank you so much. So well said. Yes. Glenn says, nah, cold-blooded murder pisses me off all the same regardless of skin color. Only thing that ticks me off a tad more are violent crimes against kids. I agree. It does. I completely agree. The kids thing bothers me more all the time. I agree with you, because they are not that an adult's not innocent, right? They don't deserve it either. But a kid's like extra innocent. Does that make sense? So yes, I'm with you. Yes. So, all right. Shelley says, doesn't consecutive sentences give another judge in the future the way to turn them into concurrent? Ooh, actually, it's a good one. I don't know if that's how that works. I'm unsure of that. Yeah. Josh says, our criminal justice system is much more code of Hammurabi than Jesus, yet Christians love it. Wow, Josh, yet again, very good. You're right. It is. Jesus was far more forgiving than Hammurabi. You are totally correct. Far more forgiving. I'm with you. Let's do the Jesus side. Way better. Let's err towards Jesus more than Hammurabi. I completely agree. Yes. Kirsten says, a horrifying example of the consecutive sentence problem is a case in Colorado where a truck driver got a 110-year sentence, commuted to 10, for brake failure. Yeah. Yes. Joshua says, mandatory minimums are also an issue. I struggle with no parole, right? I don't like no parole. Give a guy life. If he earns his way out after 30 years, he earns his way out, or he doesn't, right? Or she, but it's almost always he. So either one, right? But it's not a hill I want to die on, if that makes any sense, right? But I don't like the idea of no parole. I think everyone, even murderers, should have a chance, perhaps after 30 years or whatever, at repent, at changing, at a second chance. So maybe it's 30 years or whatever, but a chance. And it's not guaranteed parole, but something. So I don't like the idea of no parole. But the idea of mandatory minimums, 100% wrong. 100% wrong. So that should not exist. In my view, mandatory minimums are against the Constitution. Judges decide sentencing. I'm allowing my legislature to decide sentencing. That's crossing over. That's separation of powers. That is unconstitutional. You can't do that, and we do it because, well, get them. This is all war on drugs. Remember, almost everything that libertarians hate about the country and the government, almost everything comes from one thing: afraid Americans. We're afraid we do bad, stupid stuff. And mandatory minimums came out of, we're afraid of the drug people, gangbangers coming to kill us. That's where that came from. And now mandatory minimums, because that'll change it. Harsh sentencing. And someone told me this. They said, yeah, he got life. That'll teach him a lesson. No, it won't. He's never getting out. Even if he learns the lesson, he won't. But even if he did, he's never getting out to do anything about it. What's he do? Write a book? He can't. They told him he can't write a book about it either because he can't make any money. So even if he does learn a lesson, he can't tell anybody about it. So he's not learning a lesson. Well, others will learn. No one else is learning. We've had hate crimes in this country for how many years? And is it all of a sudden people aren't killing people of other colors now? They still do. It doesn't change. No one's thinking, wait a minute, I'm going to kill this guy. But wait, there's a hate crime here. They're not doing that. No one's doing that. Right? The one guy, Roddy, who obviously was questioning, he wasn't thinking, will I get life imprisonment? He wasn't thinking that. He was thinking, should I do this or not? Is this right or not? Am I pressured by my friends or not? Is this a mistake? Is this really a bad guy or not? That's what Roddy was clearly thinking. Though that was going through his head, and he made some bad decisions, and he's paying for it. But my point is, he wasn't thinking, is this 10 years or 20? He wasn't thinking that. He wasn't thinking, oh, just wait, this is going to be, none of that was going through his head. Of course not. It goes through nobody's head. So, all right. The Democrat says they were not innocent. Not only did the McMichaels admit they had no idea he had committed a crime, but also during testimony showed McMichaels pointing the shotgun at Arbery. Oh, is that right? Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. The Demonat. I did not know that. Wow, that's terrible. Yeah, and yeah, I'm gonna curse on this one. I'm not upset about the two guys going to jail. I'm not. That fine. I'm iffy on the no parole part. I'm iffy on that because just that's a general rule. Am I mad with these guys getting it? I'm not really, but I'm just saying as a general rule, I am concerned about the concept of no parole. That I'm concerned about that. And the last part, concurrent consecutive part. And I don't think the last guy, I don't think Roddy should have got that sentence. Just the last guy. And I think it matters for him. I mean, it matters for others. It matters for our system. And I think Kirsten hit it perfectly. Do we really think he would be out doing bad things? Those two guys? Yeah. They were going to do bad stuff. But Roddy? Probably not. Probably not. So, yes. Man of Tomorrow. I wonder what his live stream would be if Timothy McVeigh was sentenced to just life in prison like 2 weeks ago. Good question. Let me try to be as honest as I can be. I'm always trying to be honest, but let me try to put myself in that mindset if I can. If McVeigh had been sentenced to life in prison 2 weeks ago without possibility of parole, I think I'd feel almost the same way. I do. I think I would. I would still say I'm not mad that he got no parole. However, the idea of it is a bad idea. I would still think the same thing. Would I be mad he got no parole? No. But would I still think it's a bad idea? I would. Why? Because most people aren't Timothy McVeigh. Most of the people who are getting hammered with terrible sentencing are poor people. Many of them black. But white poor people get hammered. Hispanic people get hammered. Most people who are hammered by this are just poor Americans. There's one Timothy McVeigh every 20 years or whatever is the number, however often something bad like that happens. And I don't want to be setting standards for literally hundreds of thousands of Americans, particularly poor ones, getting hammered because I'm worried about one Timothy McVeigh or one, McMichaels, one group father-son team, right? While I don't want them getting out, I don't want to set my rules for one Timothy McVeigh or a son-father combo team that are just really jerks and bad people and probably deserve everything they got. So I think that's what I would be saying right now. I would be upset that he blew up, 160 some odd people? Is that right? Is that about right, my numbers? Over 160 some odd people that he killed them, including kids. I mean, that's horrible. And he was hoping for a race war. I mean, just makes it worse, just throws more fuel on the fire, hoping for a civil war to destroy the country. So, I mean, bad, and bad. So I wouldn't be upset that he got it, but I would still feel that's not good. And if he had an accomplice, even if he had an accomplice, let's say he had an accomplice, he had a guy who would have drove the truck for him or something. I don't think he did. If I remember the thing he did all himself. But for the sake of our argument, Man of Tomorrow, he had an accomplice who drove around. And the question is, did that accomplice know what was happening? Right? Was he part of the Aryan Brotherhood too and ready to start the Civil War and kill everybody? Then he goes away too, of course. What if he wasn't? What if he wasn't sure? What if we had some evidence, and we didn't then, but and I'm making this up, that he was trying to talk him out of it and was scared of it and thought it was a bad idea or thought it was a joke and thought, you're not really doing this, are you? Or any of those things. If that had happened, I'd still be saying, do we want that guy, the accomplice in this fictitious case, to go away for life without parole? I'd probably be saying, look, give him 10, 20 years. And I probably would be saying the same thing. That's what I think. That's where my head usually is. I think I'd be saying that. I hope I answered your question. I tried to be as honest as I could be. Thank you for the question. So, the demonat, am I saying it right? The demonat, pointing a loaded or unloaded weapon at someone is a felony, which resulting in death. I'm not sure where that is, but yes, you're right. It is felony. Yes. All right. Let's see if I can go here. Ant says, Larry, you got me in tears over here. I was that 18-year-old kid with a pile of felony charges. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. I spent most of my 20s in prison and on parole for a few bad days. Yes. Today I still have nothing to lose. Thank you, Ant. Thank you for sharing what I know to be true. I believe and I talk about it all the time. Thank you for being that guy who says, yeah, right? Yeah, it's me. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. I'm glad you are open to talking about it. Thank you so much for that. There are too many people like that. We have to have a system that is fairer, right? It's got to be fairer. Yes. So Christine says the talk was to ease the judge's conscience. Oh, Christine, yes, you're right. You're right. It was to make him feel better about what he was doing. Wow, good catch. I think you're totally correct. Yeah, absolutely. Man Tomorrow says everyone is remorseful after they get caught. I agree with you, brother. I do. I totally do. I think you're totally right. And that's why I'm only going by what the judge said. Most judges, I don't know what your experience is with judges. Most judges I meet, and I have consulted with criminal defense attorneys in the past. I've met judges. I've seen them in court. Most of them believe everybody who walks in that courtroom is guilty. They won't tell you that. They'll say they're blind or whatever. They're not. Most of them believe. Half of these guys, at least, if not more, are former prosecutors. So they already believe that everybody walking in that room is guilty, right? That's what they don't believe. They think no one's remorseful. Everybody's guilty. And again, they have to ruin people's lives. And I get it. If you ruin someone's life, you better believe that they're a bad person. Yes. And again, many of them deserve it. I'm not mad about these guys going away forever. I'm not. I know some people are. I think Douglas is unhappy about it. I get it. I'm not. They can stay away. I don't mind. They can go away forever. I'm not worried about that. But I think this one guy was remorseful. I think you're right. Everyone says it. The question is, if a judge believes it, it does move me because judges tend to not believe anybody's remorseful. So it does move me is all I'm saying. So yes. So Man Tomorrow says no lives from the Texas carrying out death sentences. Why do you say that? Why do you say that? Have I ever been pro death sentence? Even in this case, I said I wasn't pro death sentence. Never. Do I believe that in theory, and again, I'm talking theory versus practice, like Jenna was talking about, practice versus theory. In theory, am I against the death penalty? Is there a reason, or could there be a reason for a society to decide that the only way of getting rid of someone is to kill them? Maybe. I'm open to that concept on a total conceptual, theoretical plane. But in practice, no. 100% no. I do not trust the government to carry out sentences in any way, shape, or form. They're bad at this. Now I got to get them to start killing people? No. Government should not be killing citizens. No. You'd have to make a system that I can't even imagine. There'd have to be some magical system that I thought the government could be almost foolproof. I don't know. Maybe Harry Potter has a spell, but unless it's, I can't see it. So no. Generally speaking, I don't have to deal with death sentences because I live in New York. New York doesn't have death penalty. So the only time I deal with death sentences is if it's a national case, and Arbery, of course, became a national case. Most of those local, and this is my point that we talked about earlier, man. If most of the people getting killed and the bad things happening are just the poor people. Most of the people getting killed in Texas, most of them are just poor kids. Well, not that kids, by the time they get killed, they're not kids, they're adults by then. But it's just poor people. So that's what I'm saying. Let's create a system not based upon Timothy McVeigh or the McMichael's team. Let's not base it off of them. Let's base it off of the huge amounts of poor people who go through our system. I'd rather base it that way. I think that's a better way of basing it. So, obviously, the criminal justice system needs to have a balance of sticks and carrots. Yes. When you're too lenient with punishment, it enables criminals. True. New York and California learn this the hard way. And no, they're not learning, Avi. No, you're incorrect. I finally got you on something you're wrong on. They're not learning. They're experiencing, but they're learning nothing. So they're actually not learning. So the hard way. They tend to be sympathetic to criminals with these insane rules. That shoplifting is a misdemeanor as long as below $900. This is not compassion for the downtrodden, enables criminality. If someone stole a sandwich because they were hungry, it may make sense to have a higher punishment, but all these, a lighter punishment for these shoplifting offenses. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm with you, Avi, but they're not learning. They're experiencing. They've learned nothing. So see, I got you. They're not learning. Yeah, that's good. Jenna says social media is numbing everyone. Ooh, interesting. Yeah. Logic says most of society is not healthy and can almost in some ways compare society to a cancerous point at this point. I hope that's not true. Gotta hope that's not true. That sounds terrible. I hope you're wrong. I don't want it at all. But if I can, if I could walk down one more piece of this, if I could. In most cases, judges have a type of rubric, right? I forgot what it's called. It's called something. But it basically guidelines on how they sentence. And I'm making this up. Someone probably has a picture of it somewhere. I don't know the details of it, but it's this concept, like, so someone got, got convicted of X, and then there's like things you can add. What do they call those? Oh, they have a specific word for it. Enhancements. Thank you. Enhancements. They have enhancements. So he did this thing, but this thing and that thing, you add this and add the years, basically go add and subtract. It gives you an area and how much you're supposed to get. I hate that. I absolutely hate it. I understand why they do it. I do. I get why they do it. They're trying to be fair and make a system, put you in a box, blah, blah, blah. Punishment fit the crime, blah, blah, blah. I wish we didn't have that kind of system. I don't want the punishment to fit the crime. I want the punishment to fit the person. That's why if you're just going to use rubrics, why do I need a judge? An algorithm will do it just fine. And I'm not joking when I say this. If our goal is to be fair, if that's our goal, and to make sure everyone's punished equally, if that's our goal, I'm not sure that it's a good goal, but say it is, then why do I need a judge? Put into an algorithm, type it in, boop, there's your sentence. Done deal. Check a couple boxes, boom, sentence comes out. So, and you can modify it with other sentences, seeing how long people in all the prisons across the country get, modify and adjust and shift, make an algorithm so that it always comes out equal. You can get forced equity. See that? Everybody wins. And done. Who needs judges? I was hoping that wouldn't be the case, that there'd be a case to where there'd be some compassion based upon, again, I'm going back to what Kirsten said. So well done, right? The judge said, but you were convicted of murder. So I have to put you away for life. That's the wrong way of looking at it, right? It should be, okay, so you did this thing. Was it your fault? All these things. And according to the judge, only what the judge said, this guy was kind of part of it there. He wasn't the ringleader. Again, from what the judge said. So why would you shoot him the same way? I don't like the rubric. I don't at all. So, yes. All right. Let's see here. Shelley says the jury has the right to question any part of their service, including clarification of any laws and whether or not they're applicable. Agreed. They could. That's also true. Yes. If the jury was confused, they could have said, hey, wait a minute. I heard this or that. What's going on? So, yes. So, Kyle says, thanks for coming on my show, Larry. Glad I could catch a stream. Kyle was on Kyle's show. Kyle, if you can put that in the chat. I was on his show and he's been released. I don't know if my team has released it or not. But if not, we'll release it tomorrow. So we will be sharing that around. I was, absolutely. Yes. So, all righty. Kirsten says the judge felt that the McMichaels were clearly within their rights. If the judge felt that, he should have been something to the jury that to that effect and not just dismiss the charges for lack of evidence. Oh, good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah, he could have. It's a good point for Douglas. If you're still watching and listening, the judge did have other options, right? He could have told the jury this. He could have changed sentencing. He could have allowed for defenses, whatever the case may be. And I feel like if that's true, then the appeal, if you're right, should be a slam dunk. And we'll see. Look, if 6 months from now or a year from now, they're out on appeal, you were right. Douglas, you were right. If that's true. So, Excuse me. Alrighty. Chip says if this is the law, the defense should have included it in the closing argument. Good point, Chip. They probably could have snuck it in closing arguments. They probably could have. It would have been hard for them not to. And you probably would have wanted to sneak it into closing arguments so that you could say, to your point, that you weren't allowed to use the judge. If the judge actually objects and stops you, right, and actually stifles you and doesn't let you do it, then at least that now is in the record of the judge stopped me. It's the law, and the judge said no. The judge ignored the law. That would have been in the record. And I mean, look, maybe he has bad lawyers, but assuming they had decent lawyers, I would assume a lawyer would do that and go, hey, I'm going to put this in the record. I'm going to make it on the record. The judge objected to it and told me no. That right there is my appeal, because that might have changed. I think you're right, Chip. It's a good point. Yes, absolutely. Let's see. Glenn says, yeah, look how good behavior worked in, Dannemora. Those dudes were able to escape because of extra privileges. Yeah, it's Glenn, this is a valid point, right? When you're dealing with prisoners in general, right, you really have to try to, it's a balance. I hear CEOs tell me all the time, they say, now I haven't heard it in a while, I'm going to mess it up. If you're a corrections officer, you'll get it when I say it. Give the prisoners exactly what they expect, nothing more. Something like that. If you're a CEO, there's a saying, they say you give the prisoners exactly what they're supposed to get. That's it. No more, no less. And my point is, if they start taking everything away, the prisoners have nothing to lose. So you want to give them something, but how far do you want to go? And my point has always been the same thing. I think you want to let the CEOs be part of this, and too often in New York State, they're not. An example I'll give you is there were a bunch of people who wanted to give iPads to prisoners in New York State. And you would say, Larry, that's crazy. Why would you give iPads to prisoners? Well, again, because some CEOs are like, this is not a bad idea. I cannot decide how to do it. It can be something I can give. You can lose your iPad privileges. So some prisons were like, this is a good idea. Some were not. The problem is they never asked the CEOs, one, is it good for their prison? Two, how do we do it? Like some CEOs would have said, you know what? We want to keep an iPad in the central area. You get it when you get it. Some you'd have an extra privilege to bring it to your cell, whatever. But who should have decided that? The corrections officers who are in the prison, who know their prison and know their inmates, right? That's the issue. They didn't do that. They let consultants come in and decide. I'm not sure it's a true story. Now, that's crazy to me. Would I listen as governor if some corrections officer said, look, we could use iPads in our prison? Would I listen? Of course I'd listen. They might be right. Let's have a conversation. And then let them discuss, how do we deal with this? Who gets it? Who doesn't? How do we deploy them? Where do we keep them? It's their prison. Could they be wrong? Yeah, CEOs aren't magic. They're just humans. They could be wrong, of course. But if I have to trust the guys on the ground or some consultant, I'm going to trust the guys on the ground. They're going to make less mistakes for sure. And more importantly, if the consultant screws up, they don't pay the price. The CEO does. If the CEO makes a mistake, they pay the price. So the odds are they'll make less mistakes. Not just that, odds are they're going to do it right. So I don't have a problem giving this stuff out, but you got to do it the right way. And make mistakes. Some of the people in Dannemora made a mistake. And of course, the governor made even more mistakes, but that's fine. They're human. CEOs are human. Cops are human. They're going to make mistakes. It's how it works. The world doesn't end because some prisoner escapes. They caught him anyway. The world doesn't end, right? But I don't want to make my rules and laws for one prisoner or two who escaped, right? For the entire state. I want to make one that's going to affect the entire state. And once in a while, someone's going to screw up and give too many iPads out or whatever the case may be. I get it. The world's not going to end. But I still want to make it to where the CEOs are involved in this. And each prison may have a different set of rules. Prison one might say, hey, we got a situation to where they can go to their, they can go to their individual cells. That's how we roll here. All right. Another one might be like, no way. Has to be common area. Here's how, X hours. I'm not a prison guard. I'm not a corrections officer. I don't know. They should know. So anyway, sorry. So Glenn continues on. I get the point of being able to take things away. The problem with that is the cons know how to work the system. They have all day to observe and study the system and find flaws in it. Also very true, which again, why would I then believe a consultant? I'd rather believe the CEOs because the CEOs pay the price, right? If stuff goes bad, they're the ones who get in trouble. They're the ones who get fired. They're the ones who get assaulted. So they're the ones getting assaulted. That's the issue. So yes. And then, well, Glenn, you are on today. Glenn says kids are extra innocent and extra defenseless. Yes. Yes and yes. Yes, absolutely. David says, that's true. We got rid of mental hospitals, replaced them with prisons. That's the sad part. Agreed. Yes. Red says the term you're looking for is deferred, when you suspend a sentence in exchange for good behavior, but can bring the full term forward if the conditions aren't met. Thank you, Red Vapes. I appreciate it. Deferred. Thank you. That is what I was saying. You probably could have done, he could have done deferred, which I feel like for guy number 3 might have been the right answer. That's my personal view. Might have been. So yes. Yeah. Red continues. Tupac said it best about the war on drugs. Instead of a war on poverty, we have a war on drugs, so the police can bother me. Yeah. Josh says, are there mandatory minimums for financial fraud and white collar crimes? Or just my blue collar neighbors in a bad time? Yeah. Yes, you're correct. 100%. Yes. Paula says mandatory minimums have really hit women. Really? Who got mixed up with the wrong guy who was the, Paula, I hadn't even thought of that. But I remember stories. Wow. Now you brought something back for me. This had totally slipped my mind. Yeah, you're right. Mandatory minimums have really hit women who got mixed up with the wrong guy who was a dealer, did not have money for a decent lawyer, and wound up doing a hard time because she was involved with a drug dealer. Yes. Mandatory minimums have, yes. You have a lot of women, particularly in poor neighborhoods, who are looking for what they believe to be men of stature and power. Many women are. Not all, obviously, but many are. And sometimes this guy acts like he's a cool guy and has a cool job. He does have a cool job. He's dealing, but he doesn't tell her. He lies. A lot of these people who are in the black market, they're spending their whole time lying. They lie to everybody, to include their girlfriends or lovers. And she believes that he's the one and he's got a good job and all this stuff. And to find out, yeah, he's making money, but it's not from that cool job, he said. It's from something else. Yes, absolutely. So, fun fact, sentencing is not a function the Constitution delegates to judges. In colonial America, while it was not the rule, it was pretty common for juries to sentence in non-capital cases. A few states still have jury sentencing in non-capital cases. Oh, I like that. It's good. But I don't, but the sentencing is delegated to the judicial branch, correct? Not the judge itself, but to that branch. Now, the sentencing isn't in the executive branch, and it isn't in the legislative branch. So isn't it by default in the judicial branch, whether it's a judge or not? I think that's true, right? I'm sure you can help me out with that one if you can. So, all right. Dan says, obviously what they did was wrong, but life in prison solves nothing for anyone. Another valid point. These men are not going to be a threat to anyone if they're released on parole in a few years. A lot of people are concerned about there being no possible parole. That does bother me. Maybe I'm a bleeding heart, and I'll take it. I'll take it. Maybe I am. I just feel like second chances are few and far between in this country, and we need more of them. That's what I feel. And it's personal for me too. If you know my story, my father was a corrections officer at Rikers Island, and my mother was a convicted felon. So I've seen this from both sides. And I loved both of them. And, even with their flaws and even with their issues that they both had, I wanted everyone to have a second chance. So I wanted my mom to have a second chance. And she did. I helped her to have that second chance. So yeah, I do. I think I'm consistent. I mean, look, I'm emotional, so maybe I'm not. Sadly, for almost all of us, I would actually go to all of us, emotion can make us a hypocrite. It's just the way it works. I'm trying my best to not be that. So, yes. All right. Let's see here. Terry Nichols, Rose McVeigh's. Oh, that's right. Yes. Thank you. I'd forgot. Chris, yeah, you guys are smart. See, I do this live, so I don't research. Everything's off the cuff, off my head when I do this. I don't have time to look stuff up. You guys, thank you. Yes. What happened with Terry Nichols? Do you remember what his sentence was? I don't remember. Someone could check that out. I wonder, did he get life too? I don't know. So, Josh says, our judicial system has become increasingly in favor of the rich with lawyers. Yes, us regulars are getting effed. Correct, correct, and correct. Yes, absolutely. So, Red says, what about the 3 guys that killed the African-American guy? I can't remember how to spell his name. You don't be insulting him or butchering it. But they killed him just because his race was so wrong. And then in this case? I don't know. Yeah. Shelley says, McVeigh was young. Why can't we sentence a person to a certain age and after that and have they displayed true repentance, for lack of a better word? That's a tough one. Right? If I get what you're saying, Shelley, but then how do you put that into play? Right? So if I kill someone at age 26 versus 19, do I do less time at 26 because I'm closer to the cutoff age of 35 or whatever is the cutoff age? Or do I do more time because I'm young? Oh, wow. That's a tough one, right? In theory, wouldn't you want to do more time if you're older because you know better? In theory, right? Couldn't you make that an argument that if I'm 16, I don't know anything at 16. I think I know everything, but I know nothing at 16. So shouldn't you be more lenient than if I'm 36? In which case, I should know something by 36. I mean, some people don't, but I really should know something by the time I'm 36. I should have a clue what I'm doing by the time I'm 36. 16, I probably don't. So do I do more time at 36 or less time? I'm not, or is there a certain time, like once you hit 40, you have a chance? Or is it 65? Do you wait till they get out of retirement? So then do I ensure they're always on the government dole because they've been on the dole for the whole time in prison and now they're off of Social Security? And in this case, they haven't put any money into Social Security because they've been in prison the whole time. I don't know. I think I get what you're saying. I worry how do we implement that? Right. And then you do want, there is a part of retribution that has to be done there. It's just human nature, right? Is it possible that somebody kills somebody purposefully and is really remorseful and will never do it again? I think that's possible. I think that could happen. Does that mean that I want that person to not go to prison? No, I want the person to go to prison still. I do. There's got to be some price to pay, even if this is one of the individuals who in the future, right, is not going to harm anyone. To Kirsten's point, I don't think Roddy's going to kill anybody. Do I think he should do no time? No, he was part of a murder. He's got to do some time. It just feels inhuman for me to say he should just walk. I don't. It feels wrong. I don't know. I can't. So he did do something. I'm just saying life with him, basically no parole. He'll be out whenever he's 90, whatever. I think life is too much for the third guy. So I think there, but yeah, the other issue, right? If you're young and you screw up, you actually have a chance of fixing your life, right? You have an actual chance. If you're 45, 50, you murder someone, you get convicted, you're going to go away for 20 years. You could get your life together. It's possible, but the odds are slimmer, right? But you could. You're 16. You got a shot. Do 10 years. You're out when you're 26. Maybe get a degree in prison. You get a chance. I think if you give someone a chance, they can actually do it. And here's the best part. If that person is able to turn themselves around, think about what they can do for others. They can really pay it forward. And I'll go one step further. If we had an actual system that was justice, you have to pay the guy or gal or people back to hurt. Well, if you're 16, you screw up, you go to prison for 10 years, and now you go back to work, you can pay those people back. You can show them that you have remorse. You can say, I'm working, and 10% or whatever is the amount. I made the number up, right? 10% of my check goes to, the family of Jane Doe who I shot and now has trouble walking or whatever I did. Or I gave them trauma and now they had to close the store down. Insert thing here. I hit them over the head. Now they have, eyesight problems for the rest of their life, whatever. So you pay the person back. I feel like everybody has some healing. Everybody gets some healing with that system, right? With the current system, nobody really gets any healing at all. There's no healing. It's only punishment, no healing. The second system, there's some healing. Now, look, if you've lost, some eyesight from getting hit over the head, there's no permanent healing. Well, you get something versus just, what happened to your eyesight? Oh, some guy hit me over the head. What happened to him? He's in jail. He'll be out in 10 years. Who healed? Nobody. So anyway, all right. So I'm going to do this if I can. Shelly says he seems to be saying that death penalty is no longer live stream. That's what happened. Oh, is that what he was saying? Oh, I misunderstood, Shelly. Thank you for that. I misunderstood. I thought he was saying I wasn't doing live streams. Sometimes I don't get it because I apologize. Sorry about that. Man, tomorrow. I must have misunderstood you. I apologize for that. Yes. Joel says, see here. I used to be pro death penalty until someone asked me if I think the government ever makes mistakes. Yes. Again, I'm talking theory versus practice, right? Theory versus practice. In practice, 100% no. No. Absolutely. Dustin, some laws need sunset clauses too. I would argue, Dustin, every single law should be sunset. Let me say it again. Every single law should be sunset. Everyone. My gut says 5 years. Every single law. Everyone. What about murder? Murder too. Every single law. 5 years, revote, and you can't do it as a panel. You must vote each law individually, yes or no. Is someone going to vote? If some state legislature goes, you know what, murder, not a law anymore. If some does that, then that's fine. I guess you have a crazy state. Good for you. But still, there would still be manslaughter and murder, whatever. There would still be other laws. Assault would still exist. I don't know why someone would do, but people will go, what about murder? I don't know why people would have to do that. So that's a dumb example that I always get. You know, they won't okay murder. Do you want to be the guy or gal who didn't vote for murder? Murder's fine. I don't know. Anyway, but my point is every single law, the harsh laws with victims will always be revoted on, but some of the other ones won't. Some of them won't, as long as it must be one law at a time. And if you keep these guys voting on keeping the old laws, they can't make new ones. So yes, every law, every single law. So yes. Kirsten says, even if government could perfectly identify who deserves to be killed, it is a terrible idea to have human beings practice killing one another when it's not necessary. Point taken. Yes, absolutely. Lunar eclipse. FYI, blow black theory applies to McVeigh after Ruby Ridge, Waco. Valid point on that, Lunar. Yes, absolutely. Valid point. I really, yes. And the question is, does it work? Right? We're seeing that now with the January 6th issues. Everyone, yesterday was January 6th. Everyone's talking about it in the chat. You're seeing it now. Now, so many of the guys and gals that have been put in prison that now they're becoming heroes. Now they're becoming heroes to a lot of people. So I think you're right. There's blowback theory on that one too. Absolutely. And I go back to something that's historical. Some of you will know this. A little bit of history here. Look at France, 1917. For those of you who don't know this, I'll give you a very brief history lesson. World War I is going very badly for the French. So badly that the French army in 1917 is in revolt. It is literally a mutiny. It's so bad, the Germans don't believe it. The stories about how bad it is are so bad, the Germans don't attack because they think this has got to be false. Literally, the Germans at that point could have just got up and marched to Paris. The German army, the French army almost didn't exist. They were shooting their own officers. They were deserting in mass. They were shooting their own officers. That's how bad it was. Again, so bad the Germans did not believe it. If they would have attacked, they'd have walked into Paris and won World War I. That's how bad it was. So what did the French do? Well, of course, crack down hard, put everybody in prison. No, you would start a civil war. It's a terrible idea. They brought in some older general. I think it was, if I remember my history right, it was General Pétain. Some of you will check, I'm sure. I'm sorry, guys, I do this off the cuff. I think it was General Pétain. I think they brought him back. They fired this guy, Foch, if I remember that was his name. They brought in Pétain, who was an older general who the troops knew and loved, and he did not crack the whip on everybody, not crack down on everybody. He had some of the most gruesome people. They were hanged. The people who were like, going down a road shooting officers, those guys got hanged. Everyone else, he changed the system. He said, wait a minute, we have a terrible system. If everyone's fighting and unhappy, the system's bad. Let me change it. And instead of rotating people in and out of the trench line, shifting who goes in what, new troops here or there, and he rebuilt the morale of the French army to be able to withstand the German attacks. Yeah, not by just punishing people. He didn't want blowback. He was a savvy guy. I'm with you 100%. Yes. Yes, Kirsten says, yes. Sentencing guidelines and enhancements. See, I was right with the enhancements when I got that one right, Kirsten. Sentencing guidelines. Thank you. It's like a rubric called sentencing guidelines. Thank you. There we go. I like that. So, all right. Jenna says, artificial intelligence will decide over time. I think it might eventually. I think it might. Yes. Absolutely. All right. Let's see here. Josh says, Larry, you make too much sense. Too bad uniqueness and individuality will be outlawed by 2023 for the best of the collective country. I hope you are wrong. I hope you are wrong. Absolutely. I like that. Yes. Jenna says they'll kill each other over iPads. In certain areas, you're right, Jenna, which is why I think you want to allow the COs to make this decision, right? The correction officers should be making the decisions because they know that in certain cases, iPads are a reason for murder, literally a reason for murder. And in other prisons, that isn't the case. But Jenna, how do you and I know? And this is what I keep, I bring this up when it comes to prison reform often. People are like, Larry, why do you want, prison reform, blah, blah. I said, because not just for prisoners, but also for COs. But the problem is we have been doing prison reform, just terribly, horribly, right? It's a disaster because we don't listen to COs at all. So, yeah. Glenn says, my cousin's a CO. He uses discretion. He's not dirty. I'm not saying this with the bias. He make a good beat cop as well. He's a system from top to bottom is a mess. Yes. He can't wait to retire. Yes. Glenn, every single CO I've ever met, and I've met dozens of them, if not hundreds, every single one of them knows exactly how long to retirement. Everyone. Some to the day. I'm not joking. Some to the day. All of them know to the month. All of them. Some of them know to the day. So it's crazy how, yes, the average life expectancy for a prison, a CO in New York State is about 57, 58 years old. All of them know someone has committed suicide. It is a horrible, terrible system, which has to be fixed. I agree completely. Yes. Paula says a few prisons allow cats for inmates who qualify. Look at that. It helps with keeping the prisons out of trouble as you go attached to their pets. Yes, maybe that's better, right? So, Jenna, to your point, maybe the iPad is the right idea, and maybe a cat is the right idea. I don't know. Let's allow the COs to figure out and work in their prisons. Is it cats? Is it iPads? Just let's not have violent prisons is what I want. If you cannot have a violent prison, I'm fine with cats and iPads and whatever. You pick. All good. Let's have a non-violent prison so that COs aren't getting assaulted and that prisons aren't getting assaulted. I would like that to be the case. So, yes. So, all right. Let's see if I keep going down this road if I could. Paula actually goes on to say, I actually thought iPads for inmates was a good idea. Great incentive, especially for inmates who are going back on society. Yeah, absolutely. Kirsten says, Larry, have you seen or read anything about the Finnish prison system that with open prisons and as normal of life as possible, even for those who committed dangerous crimes? Yes. And if I remember right, I think it's Norway or is it Sweden? I think it's Norway that has decided that they actually have mandatory maximums, meaning you cannot put anyone in prison for more than, let me check this out. I think it's 27 years, if my memory serves. And I think it's Norway. It's a Scandinavian country for sure. That I'm positive. It's Scandinavian. I think it's Norway. It's Norway that says you may not put anyone in prison for any more than 27 years, no matter what. So you're bombing buildings, 27 years. And the concept, and I don't know how it's working, it's relatively recently, maybe last 10 years, 5 years. It's relatively recent, is that if you know that you're never going to keep anyone in prison for more than 27 years, two things happens. One, you can't just fire and forget them. You have to create a system that is going to get that person back out. So you have to have real good mental health. You have to have real good rehabilitation. You got to train them. You got to do whatever it takes to get that person back out into society because they're coming out in maximum 27 years. If they were a murderer, you better get them to not be a murderer. So I get the idea behind it. Is it working? I don't know, right? In theory, it sounds great. The question yet again is in practice, does it work? I think we will know. I'm glad Norway's doing this because 20, 50, 100 years from now, we're going to know if it works, right? If everyone keeps, if recidivism rate of murderers is 100%, it doesn't work. And luckily they get to find out, not us, right? But if it's great, if it works, let's copy it. We'll find out. So I'm glad someone over there is doing it. So I've heard that another Scandinavian country, I guess it's Finnish, is yes, creating prisons. Norway copies that model. Prisons are much more like dormitories. They're trying to make the person be able to survive on the outside. That's the goal of their prison system. So again, but to be fair, there are literally more New Yorkers, New York City residents than there are Finns. There are more New York City residents than there are Norwegians. So the Scandinavian countries are awesome, but there's only 5 million of them. There's only 5 million Finns. There's only 5 million Norwegians. I don't know how I know that number, but there's only 5 million Finns. There's only 5 million Norwegians. There's only 5 million Danes, right? There aren't that many of them. And Finland, by the way, is the most, might be Japan. Finland, Japan, and Korea always are in the top 3 of the most homogenized nations in the world. I think it's those 3, if my memory serves. I think it's Japan first, then Finland, then Korea. I think that's right. But they're very homogenous in everything they do. Now there's 120, 130 million Japanese, 50 million Koreans, South Koreans, I should say 50 million South Koreans. It's only 5 million Finns. So I don't know how I know those numbers. I drink coffee and I know things. That's all. So yes. Avi says, I know you have a lot of compassion. You need to make an exception with King Cuomo. Yes, he deserves all the misery that comes to him. If he got a hard sentence, I wouldn't feel bad for a second. Let him learn to master the game of drop the soap at the booty house. Got it. Terry got life. Again, I need to check this one out. This is over 20 years ago now. Was Terry actively involved? If Terry was, I'm glad he got life, right? If he wasn't, then I would be saying probably he shouldn't have got life. But I don't know if he was actually actively involved. Yeah, if he knew he was actively going to blow up a building and kill all those people, I'm not. Life is fine. No worries. So, yes. Jenna says, I don't like children being charged as an adult. I agree with you. And the hard part about saying that, Jenna, is if it was a crime against me, I'd be a hypocrite. I'm telling you the truth. I'm trying to be as forward as I can here. If some 6-year-old kid, I don't know, stabbed me or stabbed my wife, I'd want him to go away forever. Of course I would. I'd be a total hypocrite because it'd be me and I'd be emotional. You stabbed my wife. I'd want to kill him myself. Of course I would. But again, that can't be the way we make laws and rules. I'd be a hypocrite without question. But assuming it's not against me, I think you're right. I hate the idea of kids being charged as adults. They don't know anything. They just don't. And I know people, well, he knew enough to kill somebody. So does a 12-year-old. It doesn't mean they actually get it. They don't. And I know the answers, but they killed someone and someone has lost. I agree. Here is my argument to that. If some 15-year-old kid kills someone you love, if it were me, I would be a hypocrite and I would not be saying this. I'd be like, no, put him away forever. But here's what I would want to say back to me. If I could be savvy enough to say it back to me, this is what I would say. Putting him in jail for the rest of his life is not going to bring my loved one back. It's not going to make me heal. It's not going to make things better. My life is still going to be crap and garbage because I lost someone I loved. That's going to happen whether he goes to jail for 5 years, 5,000 years, or never. That's not going to change. What I need is some type of punishment so I feel at least vindicated. And what I'd like is some kind of healing. That's what I'd like. And I would hope that if something happens to me, I could be that calm and that level-headed to expect that. I don't know if I could. But I agree with you, Jenna. I think it's terrible. Yes. Glenn says, pedophiles and rapists should never see the sun again. They almost always repeat again. And I hope that we will find out the answers from Norway. Glenn, I hope we'll find the answers because clearly they have pedophiles too. So hopefully we'll find the answer. I hope Norwegian kids don't have to pay for that price, but yes. So Scott says, I somewhat agree. If you kill a 99-year-old, you should do less time than if you kill a 5-year-old. Ooh. And that's a weird way of looking at it, right? I mean, if you do that, again, I get the concept, but if you do that, aren't you literally saying that the 5-year-old's life is more valuable than 99-year-old's life? And I mean, I could see an argument for that. I could see the argument saying the 9-year-old is only live for a certain number of years. The 5-year-old has many more years ahead of them. I get that concept. But does the law want to recognize that and then literally say, if you're 99, and then what is the value? Do I then go to their value because they have more years available, or they value because they can make more money, because they can have more dependents, right? What is the logic behind that? And if I use that logic, what happens when I get into adulthood, right? 5 and 99, it's a pretty obvious, but what about I'm a 23-year-old male versus a 50-year-old female? Who's more valuable? What if I'm the same age? We're both 33. I'm a 33-year-old male, 33-year-old female. Who's more valuable? Neither. The same? Couldn't the argument be, well, wait a minute, 33-year-old female could have babies, and that's more valuable. Or the average income of the 33-year-old male is going to be higher than the average female, so he's more valuable. The woman will live longer on average, so she's more valuable. I mean, how do you... Tough one. And then if I'm a bad guy and I kill a 9-year-old, but what if I'm 50 or I'm 10, I'm 15, I'm whatever, right? I'm 25 and I'm a monster. So I kill a 9-year-old, but it's 99. So I do 2 years. I come out, I kill again because I'm a monster. I'm not, this is where I say, I'm not sure about the fitting, the time should fit the crime. I feel like the time or the sentence should fit the individual situation, the person versus the crime itself. Now, don't get me wrong. Emotionally, and I'll go back to my emotion again. If you kill a 5-year-old, man, what a monster. Like, I want you to go away forever. I do. Kill a 9-year-old, I'm still sad you killed somebody's grandma, grandpa, and they survived 99 years, and then all of a sudden now you offed them. That's terrible. But at the same time, you know what would happen during the wake. They'd all say, you know, he had a long life and blah, blah. You know, so we as a society are more accepting of the elderly passing. And I get it. It makes societal sense, right? They've had a life. They've done these things. We feel, but a 5-year-old didn't even get a chance. We feel like they got cheated because they did. So I get where you're going, but I don't know if it actually works in practice. So, yes. Kirsten says, good question. It's not clear to me if sentencing is delegated to the judicial branch. Judicial power is invested in the judicial branch. I have to read up more specifically on what that's what we meant. I'm thinking that a capital punishment, though, was almost certainly legislated, historically. I'll look at it more. Well, yeah, right. You legislate what the law, right? Let's say the law by default, but the actual sentencing, right? I mean, why do you have a judge then, right? If there's no need for sentencing, if there's no need for the idea of leniency or specific mitigating circumstances, if that's not required, then why do we even have sentencing process? It should be the law says if you kill someone, 25 years, right? If you steal, 5 years. Why is it between 5 and 10, right? We would need it. This is where my head is. So, all right. Let's see here. Josh says, I'd appreciate restorative justice more than our current system of vengeance. 100%. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Yes. Kirsten says, name one law where a sunset clause actually worked. I'm not saying they never do, but I can't think of one. I think you're right, which is why I say every law should. I think you're right, Kirsten. Because when there are so few of them, there are some, right? The Patriot Act, right? All those laws from 2001, they get renewed every single time, right? So I think you're right. They don't, which is why I think every law must. This must become the norm. And it must be done one at a time so we can look at our list and see. And then people are not responsible for that law. So now when you have a law that says because you have a vial of crack in your pocket, you do 30 years in jail, the current New York State Assemblyman is responsible for that law. That's what I want. The current congressperson is responsible for that law. So that's why I want that. Most of the laws I think will just get done again and again, but some of the most egregious ones. But I said when we know what's coming up, we can petition them and go, why are you doing this? This is a bad law. Stop. It's a bad law. Stop. And we can also ask questions. Why do we have them? We have a lot of laws that are just useless and dumb and just they're fake laws. They're fake crimes. I think if everyone did it, it would work. This is why I'm not a fan of some laws sunset. I'm a fan of all laws sunset, all of them. Or I think you're right, it doesn't work. Yes. Shelley says, I'm glad the man who murdered my nephew is dead, so I don't have to hate him, and the family he was shooting at doesn't have to fear him. Wow. It's a valid point, Shelley. I can't say you're wrong. If someone had killed someone I loved, I'd want them dead too. You're not wrong. You're human. I get it. And now you don't have to hate him or be afraid. I agree. Yes. So, all right. All right, let's see what we do here. Joel says, no sunset is why the law books are filled with ridiculous laws. Yes, like you can't walk your cat with a light attached to it after dark. Oh, is that true? That's amazing. Yeah, I love that. Yes, I love that. That's good. All right, that's very good. All right, so I go down here a couple more of these guys. Thank you guys for the back and forth. It's amazing. You're doing a lot of back and forth. I do appreciate that. So, yes. All right, let me go down here a couple times. Let's see here. Amy says, my nephew was in his early 30s and hates being a CEO. Yes. Amy, I hear it all the time. He said it's gotten very dangerous for the officers of them. But that's my other problem. That is my no parole thing. Amy, I'm in jail now for life with no chance of parole. Your nephew pisses me off. Why not hit him? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Put me in jail for more? I'm already in jail forever. And if I hit your nephew, I'm a hero to all my thugs inside prison. Yeah, let me hit that guy. I got to see. I'm now a hero. I want to hit your nephew now. You're right. It is a very difficult job. Again, my father was CEO of Rikers Island. Yes, absolutely. Yes. So let's see here. Let's see. Nooner says, Larry, except nobody's defending genuine act defendants. They're being treated worse than Gitmo detainees. Most of them didn't resort to violence. War on Terror 2.0. Glenn Greenwald was right. It's a valid complaint. It totally is valid. I see it. I mean, I'm trying to think about this, right? How this is being treated as if they were all violent. But the reality of it is, you see me all the time. I tell you that when you fight against the power, your crime is actually heresy. Many of you heard me say this before. Oh, you didn't agree with them. You said your crime is heresy. In this case, the crime that the January 6th people actually are being convicted of, I mean, not officially, but in reality, is sacrilege. Those of you who are religious, you know what sacrilege is. That's their actual crime. If you remember the heresy and sacrilege, does there really have to be proof? No. No, not really. Being accused of heresy is the same as being convicted. Being accused of sacrilege is the same as being convicted. So the crime of the January 6th guys, more than anything else, is sacrilege. Many people in authority and power, they see that building as a holy building. They call it things like the temple, the cathedral. I don't call that, they do. So I think, yeah, I think a lot of that's true. I would agree. A lot of that's true. So Paul says, yes, Norway has progressive prisons. I think they have mandatory maximums. Even for mass murderers. Yes, it's a mandatory maximum no matter what. Yes. And she also says they also have nicer prisons, look like dorms. Yes. They often wind up responding to criticism from the states. Yes, absolutely. 100%. That's very much true. All right, let's see if I can do here. Let's see here. Jack says, let's go, Larry. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Yes. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding Terry Nichols, and it's believed that he's protecting someone. Oh, okay. If I remember correctly, he said he did not know, and of course, the prosecutor said that he did. Yeah, I mean, I think he probably did. I mean, again, I'm going here by what the judge says, right? To what Man of Tomorrow said, and he's totally right. Everyone's sorry when they're caught, right? Oh, I didn't know. Of course, absolutely, of course. But this time, the judge actually believes it. If the judge believed that Terry Nichols was innocent, didn't know, I probably would have more open. I'd be more open to it. But the judge, no one believed it. Everyone's like, no, he totally did it. So yes, there we go. All right. All right. Glenn says, I don't know. Ever since Raise the Age happened, we're seeing kids do some bad stuff. A 16-year-old just gunned down and killed a 16-year-old in Troy last night. Yeah, but my argument, I guess, to that, Glenn, is did it matter what the law was? Was that 16-year-old going to shoot the other 16-year-old because of the environment that those kids are in right now, heavily made by the government? Whether the penalty for his action was 3 years in prison or life in prison or execution. I don't think that the punishment, whatever it would have been, would have changed the outcome. The outcome would only have been changed, in my view. And again, I'm looking at it from the top down here. If you know someone I know, Glenn, please enlighten me. But I feel like the only thing that would have changed that would have been the environment those kids are in, regardless of whether the laws, and if they knew it, even if they knew, like someone told that kid, "Hey, Johnny, you kill somebody, it's life." He'd be like, "Guess I'm getting life then." He'd go out there and kill somebody. I don't think it would change. I think the environments would did that. I don't think the law mattered in this case. I think most of the time. I mean, people have been going to jail for life for drugs for years. People in many countries get a death penalty for drugs for decades. They still do it. They still do it. So I get the problems of Rochester. I see it. I get the problems of Troy. I see the problems of Albany. I see the problems of New York City. I see them all. I don't think the laws are the problem. Well, the laws are the problem, but the criminal laws are not the problem. It's the system that we have that's really, having the problem. So yes. All right. Josh says we don't let kids do many adult things until they're 21. Yet push adult liability in young teenagers. Can't have both. It's a valid point, right? It's a valid point. I don't know. Avi says if you can join the military at 18 because you're an adult, you should be able to drink alcohol or buy a gun. Adults get the responsibilities, liberties that come with adulthood. True, but this is interesting because you don't know. Some of you probably know this, but the draft used to be age 21. Well, if you're getting drafted at 21, you can volunteer at 18. In fact, legally in America, you can volunteer at 17. I know because I did. I joined at 17. You just can't go to a combat zone until you're 18. But you can be in boot camp. You can be training at 17 years old. You can be 17 and be an active duty Marine at 17 years old. You just can't go to a combat zone. They can't kill you. They can't just be your death until you're 18. But 17, you can actually join. So my issue is basically with the draft, right? If the government's saying I'm drafting, which I'm against a draft, but if they were drafting saying you must go serve and go off and die at 21, then I could see the other 21s, if that makes any sense, right? And at the start of our country, the beginning of our country, voting was 21, white, male, owned land. You had to have all four to vote. That was the adulting of the 1700s. So it's been changing ever since. And if we're going to go down to 18, I think you're right. You got to go down to 18 or not. I think America has to decide what's the year you become an adult. It hasn't always been 18. It used to be 21. In certain countries, it's still like 25. Saudi Arabia? There's certain countries where it's like 25. I forgot what countries there are, but there's some that do 25. So you don't get to vote or do anything until you're 25 years old. Some countries have that. I'm not saying we should go 25, but we have weird rules like you can go to war at 18. In certain areas, you can smoke at 18. Some you can't smoke till 21. You can do porn at 18, but you can't. You could drive at 16. In certain states, some states 14. What are we doing here, right? Where are we going? When are you an adult? And I'm actually okay with picking virtually any age in that area. I just wish America would pick an age. Is it 19? Is it 20, 21, 18? Whatever. But at that point, you're an adult. And your points are valuable, Avi. At one point, you're an adult. Responsibilities and liberties. Yes. I don't know. Maybe do you get to pick? That's not a bad idea. How about that? You get to pick between 18 and 21. So the individual person from the year 18 to 21, at 21, you're an adult no matter what you do, right? You become an adult by default at 21. Maybe earlier you decide you can accept adulthood or not until you're 21. I imagine if we did that type of experiment, I wonder what percentage of American youth would opt out till 21 and how many would stay if we did that. I don't know if that's even possible, but it's a thought experiment, right? So if we actually did that, would that actually make it to where would more people opt in or would more people opt out earlier? And would we by default would people start doing it all at like 19 or something, right? Would that happen? I don't know, because you couldn't smoke, you couldn't drink legally, obviously. I mean, you probably would, but you couldn't smoke, do any of the things until you're legally an adult. So if he's like, well, I don't want to smoke, I don't want to drive, right? All those, I don't do any of those things. Go wait till I'm an adult, whenever that is. Maybe. Something to think about. So, all right, let's see here. Kirsten says, I'm not sure I'd feel comfortable with laws that uphold rights all having sunset clauses. Sunset clauses might suddenly start working. Well, yes and no, right? I would assume with this that we would not be talking about any constitutional rights. Those are amendments and those are constitutional. So those wouldn't have sunset clauses, but others would, right? And some of them might be like, I guess in theory, like the Voting Act would. So yeah, there'd be some that would be there, but then again, you'd have to be responsible for doing that, right? And people are, right? When you basically, go back on clauses and Voting Act, now you're responsible for it. So I don't know, right? Already, Kirsten, they take our rights away without changing the laws. At least now they have to be responsible for it, at least. I mean, do it already. It's a valid point. I'm not sure if that makes sense. So Polo says, looks like Nichols helped McVeigh steal dynamite for the mom. So yeah, he stayed where he is. Paul, I'm in. I'm sold. Yes, he stays. You're helping a guy steal dynamite? Yeah. And you knew what you were doing. You knew what you were doing. Absolutely. William says, aren't tax cut laws sunset all the time? That's true, William. Valid point. Yes, absolutely. Jenna says, good conversation. Thank you. Have a good day. I hope you guys liked the conversation. That was my point. It was interesting for me. I thought you guys would like it. I thought it was interesting to have this conversation, right? I think yes. Thank you for that. Lindsey Graham did call their capital their temple. Yes, absolutely. See, I didn't make that up. That's them. They call that, right? They're the ones who treat it that way. They're the ones who say that. It really is a tough issue. Absolutely. So I guess my whole point of this evening was the idea of prison, bail, sentencing reform, all of those reforms. And I'm pro all of the reforms. It's how do you actually put them into play? And sadly, in the recent years, particularly in New York State, whenever we tried to reform, it's just been done so poorly. It's failed miserably. Our prison reform has failed. Our bail reform has failed. Do I want prison reform? Yeah, not what we have. Do I want bail reform? Yeah, not what we have. Do I want, sentencing reform? Yeah. I don't know if we even have it good now, but I want all of those things. The problem is we don't have this conversation. The goals aren't the goals that we want. And it winds up being keeping one fringe of our political spectrum happy and pissing off the other. It's almost as if the goal is to make the other angry so that I can get votes. Oh, shocker. That's what I feel, right? That's what I feel. Like our goal with most of our reform is one, a grift, right? Just a grift so that my cronies can make money. And the second thing is to make the other angry. Insane. And I think we have to make some changes. I think reform is good. We should reform. It's just got to be the right way. And these conversations have to happen. And before we go there, I do want to say one thing, guys. Please, libertarians.com. They are a sponsor. Go there, share the link, get some cool merch. It does matter. It keeps the show going. I appreciate it tremendously. If you want to support me, trying to make New York a better place, LarrySharpe.com/donate. Always good. And of course, like, comment, and share. Guys, have a great weekend. I will see you all on Monday.